friends, welcome back to another episode of the unofficial companion podcast to HBO's hit show, Industry. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are here talking about Season 4, Episode 2, The Commander and the Gray Lady. Now, Kristen, I don't know about you. I was expecting not this in this episode. This is a beautiful cinematic episode. It's a great character study. It is so unlike anything we've experienced in the world of Industry before. They were very ambitious. We're going to get to our feelings here. Let's talk about the title for 2 seconds.
Okay. There is no finance, by the way, in this episode. I do want to just give people a little warning.
We'll find a way to talk finance. Don't scare everyone away. Everyone's going to tune the fuck out. So, the Gray Lady, in my sphere of reference, is the New York Times. So I was like, is this about newspapers? Is that where we're going to go with this? But it's also, it makes me think of ghost stories.
Wait, what?
And that is much more, yeah, that's the nickname for the New York Times. The Gray Lady.
Really?
Yeah.
Is this like a known thing?
Yeah, girl.
I did not know that. I subscribed to the New York Times. I listened to the Daily, and I did not know any of that. So interesting. Yeah,
but
every day.
Spoiler alert, this isn't about the New York Times at all. So don't worry.
No.
You don't need to know that whatsoever.
Although, I mean, look, obviously it is interesting that you have Lord Norton, who is, again, we call him newspaper guy.
About newspapers. Yes.
No. Yeah.
But I don't think that's what they were going after. When you think Gray Lady, I think of old ghost stories, and this is very much a ghost story. So
yes,
we'll get into it here. And I will say, on first watch, I was disappointed by the lack of finance, to your point, Kristen. But I actually, on second watch, this is a very beautiful little capsule episode about Henry Muck. It's very cinematic. It could have been a movie on its own.
Yeah.
Not necessarily sure it was a movie I wanted to watch, so we'll get into it. Well, let's kick us off, Kristen.
Awesome. Okay, so the whole episode opens and you see Henry Muck just standing there and he's waiting for the vote tallies to come in. So this is the election where they're getting the final results from, I guess it says the MP of Wakefield, which,
yes.
What does MP stand for?
Oh, member of parliament, I want to say.
Got it. But it's like, so he's standing there and you have all the different parties. So they start going through the different people. So they have like the Liberal Democrat gets like 5,000 votes. The Green Party, they have some like random guy with a trash can on his head called Binface.
Count Binface of the Count Binface Party. But I actually think that was very funny because when you think about it, when you're running these elections, most people, I think many people, joke about how politics is just a clown show. It's just a circus. You might as well run with a trash can over your head and ha ha ha. And then some dude on Twitter takes it literally and goes and does it and takes votes away from whoever might have been the best candidate potentially.
Fair.
So that's a very frustrating thing in politics. I can imagine it's much more frustrating if you're standing up on that stage.
Yes. Although in fairness, I did do the actual tallies. And so Henry
didn't decide it.
He was not, no. And we hear like his whole name. It's like Muck, Reginald, Henry, Ferrers, Charlie Norton, Conservative Party, 16,454. And then Jennifer Bevan, we know who wins. She's from the Labor Party, 17,892. So she was over 1,000 above him. And again, our friend Ben Faisal only got 309. But so this is the moment when they find out that Henry lost the election. And you see Yas there the whole time. Again, they're nervous. They go back and forth to kind of their facial expressions as, they're waiting to hear like what all the tallies are. And then when it comes out that he did not win, you see Yas, mouth to him like, I love you. She's being very supportive. They both look disappointed, but Henry, gracious loser, extends his hand, shakes Jennifer Bevan's hand. We then hear someone say, after an entire generation of the Conservative Party, the winds of change are finally at our backs. And that's where the word industry first comes in. So it does come in quickly. Was there anything else quickly before we then kind of move on?
We do learn, as you were just reciting Henry's full name, which we got, that Reginald is part of his name, which we did not know, which is an important little tidbit.
Oh, I actually did not know why. So glad you pointed that out. And we then also do see that in the next scene, Yas, the whole gym or wherever they are is empty. And again, Yas is there very much being comforting. And she makes a joke about how like, you don't have to keep fucking Margaret Thatcher now. And he says, the thing is, I like fucking Maggie T. But they just kind of joke, they laugh, they kiss. And then they have this music. The music ends abruptly. And then we're in a room where you can see, Henry is he's in the same outfit that we saw him end the prior episode in, like this nightgown. I don't know what it is. It's like silk linens. That's
a dressing robe. Yeah. But so before we get to Henry in the next scene, in this flashback, we have the song Our House by Crosby, Stills and Nash playing in the background. It's like, our house is a very, 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 and so I think we're getting in this little capsule at the beginning where we do see this scene where the auditorium is empty and it's just the two of them, just Henry and Yasmin. It made me think a little bit of the surreal scene in the season finale where the dinner party empties and it's just Yasmin and Robert, and you see that moment between the two of them. Now we get this moment in isolation of their relationship where she is sitting up, he's kneeling at her feet, and she's this motherly, comforting figure, and he's crying, and she's making jokes to try to comfort him. And it's very sweet and tender. It's not the Yasmin we know of being abusing her
dominatrix
power over men. Exactly. This is a kind, gentle Yasmin that we're not accustomed to seeing so often. And you have this moment where they seem like they love each other. And she's very tender towards him with this song playing that, you know, is evocative of like this marital bliss.
Yeah. And it's actually, she's like that, it seems, through the whole episode. She obviously gets angry about him just not being able to kind of save himself. But the whole episode, you do feel that there is real love. Like, she does love him, which in the prior closing out of the season 3 premiere, she was like, I don't know if I love you. He's like, I don't know if I love you. And then through this, you do see that they do, you know? But anyway, maybe not, because we'll see if you agree with
maybe.
That. Yeah, maybe. So anyway, okay, so next scene, Henry is hungover. He's wearing, like I said, these fancy jammies. I literally wrote down fancy jammies. And Yas comes in. He's just like, oh, fuck, because they're opening up the blinds. The blinds become a big thing in the scene. And Yas says, you'll miss 11s, which I don't know what that is. Is that just like you eat some kind of meal at 11? I don't know.
Brunch. But if you've ever watched The Hobbits, they're worried about missing 11s as they're going on their journey in Lord of the Rings. I think it's just British for brunch.
Interesting. Okay. So Henry asks what time it is, and Yas says that his uncle has been basically awake and prowling around downstairs for hours. She says she stayed in London at Claridge's. And he replies, that sounds expensive. So we're basically seeing that they're not doing stuff together.
They're leading separate lives.
Exactly. And so as she's talking to him, she's trying to have a conversation. The maid is in there opening up the curtains, and she's kind of like, I can do this. Basically, get out. I want to have a private moment with my husband. So she's just like, it's fine. I can do that. Trying to initially start politely. And she then says that they're celebrating Henry tonight. She says, I'd rather not have to explain away your absence at your 40th as well. And then Henry addresses.
I'm not sure when she says as well, if she's just referring to the dinner party that we know that she had where he was allegedly sick, or if this is supposed to be an ongoing pattern of absences.
Yeah.
So I think we're intended to interpret that, but we just saw him in the previous scene in this dressing robe is how he closed out the previous episode. So it's unclear if it's supposed to take place the morning after that dinner party that she had for everybody where Whitney and Harper were there.
Right. And so Henry addresses the maid. We learn her name is Molly, asks him to go fetch some stuff, but the maid keeps like doing stuff. And she's like, I can do this. Like, basically get out. And Henry is upset at Yasmin and tells her to let the maid fulfill her function. And Yas is just like, right. Happy birthday, darling. And then she walks out.
She throws his birthday gift on the dresser and storms out.
Oh, I didn't even realize she had got, what was the birthday gift? I didn't even notice that.
The watch.
Oh, yes. Okay. I missed that was, okay. Interesting. Got it. Three watches, and I did not notice the watch. I mean, I see the watch later. I didn't realize that was what was happening
and
there.
In the dialogue back and forth, there is some British coded stuff. Basically, what Henry asks Yasmin is she going to come shooting with them? So they're going shooting that morning to celebrate his birthday, because this is what we do apparently in the UK.
So anyway, the maid apologizes, says she's sorry, and Henry just replies, don't worry, she's learning. You see that there's like 2 empty bottles of champagne in front of him, and so the point is like, it's just this debaucherous, whatever. At least he's been drinking a lot, unclear about anything else. So from here, we go to the next scene where it is in the kitchen, and you have Yasmin, Lord Norton, and Henry. It's kind of quiet and awkward, and Yas says, Alexander, have you been introduced to Jennifer Bevan yet? Junior minister, the young lady we lost to. I had her at dinner last month. So this actually, to your point, I guess this is now a month later. So Lord Norton says, I'm surprised that none of the senior ministers have reached out yet. It's been 10 weeks already. And Yas says, well, the Labour Party don't think they need the tabloids. Lord Norton says, we backed them. And Yas says, well, only after you knew they'd win. Yasmin laughs. Lord Norton says, so you think I'm yesterday's man? She says, no, not at all. But Henry says, but maybe not tomorrow's.
Let's pause for a second before we get to the rest of the scene. So the framing of this scene, it's this awful, like kind of depressing, sad, very quiet, no one's speaking. Everyone's kind of looking down at the table. There's this abundance of sausages that they place in the background behind Yasmin, like a plate this high with giant sausages on it. But the way that they're sitting at the table, they have Henry sitting at the head of the table. They have Lord Norton sitting with his back to the window, and they have Yasmin sitting with her back to the where the servant is kind of like figuring things out in the background. This placement at the table will be very important for later. But I think as they're talking about, obviously, the political tides having changed, thinking back to, the very literal meaning of Lord Norton and his newspapers not being part of this wave of the future, thinking about him being calculated in terms of backing the party that he knew would win when it was time also makes me think about his decision to go to bat for Yasmin when it came to Henry, that he suddenly became this stalwart supporter of her once he realized that she was the winning ticket for Henry to move himself out of his depression that he was in the last season. So I felt like there was almost a double entendre there of her almost referring to herself as like, well, you only helped me. You were going to sabotage me in the tabloids.
I don't know.
Until you knew that I was the winning woman and to bet on me and, help me control the narrative in the press.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. So they all are sitting there awkwardly, and Yasmin says, you could say that legacy media isn't exactly courting the voters of tomorrow. I think Jenny, again, Jennifer Bevan, could help on that front. So I've invited her to Henry's birthday dinner tonight. She then takes a sip of tea, and Lord Norton just says, good. He puts his glasses back on, and Henry's there looking at that watch that was his birthday gift from Yasmin, and it's engraved on the back with the letters RM. And Yasmin says it was in your father's credenza. And we start to hear the drum beat from that prior episode. She says, I had it serviced. And then you also start to hear like a ticking sound of the clock, like listening to the watch. Henry says, will you excuse me? And then he gets up and walks out. Lord Norton says to Yas, we'll get him there. Meaning like, I know that he's in this like deep, dark depression. We're going to get him there. And then as we go into the next scene. We also know very
clearly that this is going to be an episode at this point about Henry confronting his father's suicide. So RM, I imagine.
Oh, Reginald
Muck.
Smart. All right. So the next scene, again, it opens with that same drum beat, and you see Henry there looking at a bunch of guns. So he's in, I guess, like the armory, and he takes one out, but then someone walks in and he sort of puts it back like, oh shoot, So the man asks, anything I can help you with, sir? And Henry says, no, just cleaning my gun. And the man says, leave it to me. Again, like they have all of this help around them, right? So just leave it to me. And Henry says the lock on the armory is a little sticky, maybe a touch of WD-40. I think he wanted him to leave so that he could finish what he came in to do, which is probably to try to kill himself. But then he thinks better about it. And he actually says instead, can you change the lock? And he uses an excuse about the people coming from the party. He says, we have guests coming. Who knows what ancient antipathies we'll have people spread to the armory for. But again, I think that was sort of him being like, oh, hold on, change the lock. Don't let me in.
Save me from myself. 100%.
Yeah. So from here, we then go and they're all about to go hunting. And again, drumbeat continues. Lord Norton says to Henry, you realize your behavior is unacceptable. This listlessness is one thing, but when it manifests as antipathy for your wife, no one expects you to be uxorious. Again, by the way, the freaking I need to use the dictionary for every other sentence here.
Basically, Lord Norton confronts Henry about moping around all day. Yeah. I don't think we need to do every single line.
Okay, so
giving Henry a big reality check here.
Yes.
He is saying, hey bro, I know you're depressed. Get over it.
Yeah. Well, I did think it was funny because then when he said that, he's basically saying, what is the path out of this? Like, how are you going to stop being this mopey, depressing person? And Henry gives this whole SSRIs, CBT, blah, blah, blah. I did think it was funny when he said, some asshole telling me to make sure my eyes see sunlight first thing, which is so tech bro. It's go out first thing in the morning.
It's Andrew Huberman, right? Being sees sunlight in the first 5 seconds of waking up. And he asked him about taking lithium and he's like, lithium made me fat.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to say. It was so funny. Lord Norton just says, even if you got fat, that's better than this. And then asks about Yas, do you love her? And she says, of course I love her, but the lithium muted everything. And so then they go on and talk. And Lord Norton says, you need to find structure. There's only much shit she, meaning Yasmin, will take. Henry says, well, where is she going to go? Really? And meaning she got tarred and feathered in the newspapers and her good name was almost besmirched, if you will. And so her being under their umbrella, part of their family, protects her. So he's like, well, what is she going to do? Where is she going to go? And then Henry says, fuck my father and his genetic inheritance. Essentially, I think meaning like it's his father's fault that he feels this way. Lord Norton says, today was always going to be difficult. He loved you. Henry said, no, he left me. And then he said, you know what would have been more loving, a fucking vasectomy. And so I do think that that was an interesting point just in terms of something we hear later about Yas and her dad. But the main idea is like birth control. He should have never had children, essentially. And then Lord Norton goes on to say, I sometimes think about what you saw. It was an unimaginable horror because Henry told Yas that his father disappeared one day and then nobody knew what happened. Lord Norton is now making it seem like he might have seen his dad kill himself. And so Henry gets angry at this point and takes the gun and like puts it right up against Lord Norton's chest. And in response, Lord Norton was almost like, freaking, I dare you. So he takes it closer and he pulls him in and and by the way, everyone is watching him. And he pulls it.
All the people on the hunt are like,
I know, they're like,
just standing there ignoring what's going down. Like, this is a regular occurrence on the Norton estate.
Yeah. But again, because Henry says, what if I finish you here? And Lord Norton just replies, this dislocation you feel isn't going anywhere. And Henry just screams, normal people don't feel like this. Lord Norton says, you can ignore it, numb it, drown it out, or integrate it into your life. One day you'll find a way out of these woods. And then he walks off because again, Lord Norton was like, you're not going to fucking shoot me.
He walks off to him.
Yep. Takes a sip of whatever's in his flask. And then Henry Muck shoots up at the sky, which back to that sort of hunt from season 2 was like they shot at the sky and like a bird fell down. So
like the one bird they weren't supposed to kill.
Yeah. It was Bloom who did that. He was just like, well, I'm going to kill that bird. All right. So from here, we then go to the next scene. Henry's just sulking in his tub, drinking champagne. Yas walks in. And again, I literally wrote, she comes in saying hi very lovingly. And so she tells him that her aunt was a late RSVP and it's essentially on Charles's side. So meaning it was likely his father's sister. And Henry asks if she's as problematic as Charles was. Yas doesn't even answer. And then she just makes it known. She's like, I want to get back to where we were with like our sex life, with everything. Like, you don't look at me. And she tries to get him to stand up. She goes over, tries to get him excited. And he just kept says, stop, stop, stop. And he tells her, if you want to sleep with other men, you can. She just doesn't even dignify that with a response, looks at him incredibly pissed off and says, you have a 2 p.m. with Whitney. She gets up, she walks out.
This scene, the framing of this scene where he's in the bath, first of all, I hate baths. Like, I think like the idea of just sitting in dirty water is unsexy. But so the way that she tries to kind of reignite the passion between the two of them, she's on her knees next to the bath, kind of like humbling herself before him.
Yeah.
And she's stripped down all of her pride. She is desperate to make this work. And he is just totally rejecting her. And it's unusual for us to see Yasmin continually doing this thing where she keeps coming back for more punishment with this person. We're not used to seeing Yasmin in this role. So this is very new and very surprising.
Yep. All right. So then from here, we then see Henry crushing up pills, similar to like what we saw in the prior episode.
I think this is now the scene that we saw in the prior episode.
Yes. And so we hear someone giving a tour to a group of kids. And this is where we hear the title of the episode. The Gray Lady, Henry Fairfax, is the house's most famous ghost. She died of a broken heart when her paramour, her valet, was murdered by her husband. Henry then takes the crushed up pills and he like puts them in a box. And the woman continues saying her headless husband is also said to stalk the grounds. She then realizes Henry's there. They're like on a higher level looking down at Henry, like right near that harpsichord with the do not play. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he screams at her and says, you're not meant to be in this part of the fucking house. He then apologizes and asks them, just to leave him alone. And the woman like hurries these children out who are on this, who are like on this house tour. By the way, like that's terrifying. If I was a kid and I was on a house tour, they're like, boo, this is a haunted house. There's a ghost. I'd be like, get me out of here. But you know my feelings about ghosts. So
I do. But I will say, when you talk about a headless ghost, I think of Nearly Headless Nick from Harry Potter.
Yes.
So it doesn't have this like super ominous feeling, this like Rebecca type ghost that they're trying to evoke here. But I do think there's also the double entendre of losing your head. So like losing your mind, losing your head. And I think we will also find out later that that's not potentially accidental when it comes to how his father actually died. So I think that we are evoking this ghost. Truly, if you're not watching with subtitles, I don't know that you even catch any of this. It's so quiet and off screen that you hear this. So friendly reminder to all of you, please watch with subtitles on. You'll get way more out of it.
Yep. So the butler walks in, says, Mr. Haberstrom to see you at Lady Muck's invitation. Yas walks in behind him and tells him to put on his clothes. And then the butler walks over with clothes. Now at this point, Henry looks back to look at something, which I assume were likely his father's ashes. But when he turns back, he's all dressed. And Whitney is there. So I wasn't sure if this was like supposed to be a brown out because he's on like so many drugs that he didn't even like realize that this was happening. Just like all of a sudden Whitney's there. I don't know if you took any other meaning to that or.
Well, Henry looks so shocked when he looks up and he's fully dressed. So I'm with you. Although we didn't actually see him take those drugs prior to this. Yeah. It's very confusing how this all happened. And this house is the only place where we've had this surrealist filming, which is why I brought it up from that.
That's an interesting
from the previous
point.
episode in the dining room of the season finale of the prior season where we had that magical moment between Yasmin and Robert. So now all of a sudden, like time is skipping. Henry doesn't know where he is. We've got ghosts being evoked. So it's your favorite, Kristen. It's a haunted house. Henry's mind is haunted. He has lost his head.
And so it's funny because Whitney says, "How are you, Sir Henry?" And Henry replies, 100% well. Whitney then says, "I'm here to ask you one simple thing. What do you want to do next?" And Henry kind of looks down and smiles. And then, as he's thinking, he says, and I do think these exact words are important. He says, "I needed the entire party machine and my uncle to win a safe seat by election. I was an MP for 6 months, prison minister for 72 days, and I ran a public utility into administration," obviously talking about Lumi. Whitney says, "Lumi didn't fail because of the clarity of your vision. Your timing was off. That's it. You had the highest approval rating of any cabinet minister, and your commitment to leveling up in the North, you pushed to nationalize the probation service against your party's tribal instincts. Your agenda was working. You were just undermined by the prime minister's myopic decision to call an early election," which, by the way, in the US, like that's not a thing, but in the UK, like you can just like call an election whenever, which is so funny. Henry then says, "I failed upwards and then failed totally. There are no second acts." Whitney then says, "In American life, I'm not sure the same could be said for the Brits." And I was a little confused by that because I feel like in America, you can fail a million times and nobody cares.
I said the same thing. I'm like, we have a reality TV star as our president. You can have a million second acts, right? You've got people who have gone to jail who are now, you've got Martha Stewart, who is a beloved national celebrity. You've got Snoop Dogg, her best friend, who was a gang member, right? Who is like, you get so many second chances in America. So I had the exact same reaction. I have tons of exclamation points in my notes here at this thing.
This reminds me of the thing that we talked about last episode, where it's almost like they like flipped it. It should have been like, in British life, I'm not sure, but American life, yes.
Now I will say, as we go on to hear more from Whitney is just straight up lying through his teeth whenever he speaks to Henry Muck. He is blowing smoke straight up his ass. And given how he spoke to Jonah about all of Jonah's shortcomings, where Jonah was still like a functional CEO, now you've got Henry Muck, who is, barely functioning, doesn't even know how he got to this meeting. So we all, I think, do not need to believe a word that Whitney says.
No. So Henry says, "I'm a fraud touched by success." And Whitney says, "No, you're just telling the wrong story. You're a success who believes he's a fraud. Really, you were a leader in your bones." Whitney then says, "And what great man hasn't lived a life without friction?" So from here, then the music changes again. And we are now in the bedroom of Henry Muck and Yas. And Yas walks in and she's all dressed up. And I feel like this is the scene that we saw in a lot of the previews where they're in this like crazy hair and these, 1800s like gowns.
She's supposed to be Marie Antoinette.
Interesting. And didn't she lose her head? Yeah.
She
Interesting.
Did indeed.
Okay. So she's, I guess, Marie Antoinette. And so as she comes in, he says, "You can't be serious with this shit. I look like Elton John." And she's like, "No, you look fucking adorable." She asks about how the meeting went with Whitney. And he just goes, "Did you brief him on how to puff me up?" And Yas was like, "He believes in you." And then as she stands up, she's taller than he is. And in theory, you usually have the guy is taller than the girl. And so when like, if you're a woman and you put on like super high heels and you're taller than the man, I feel like it's a little bit emasculating.
The way that they film it too, they filmed that down and over her shoulder. So she looks like she is quite literally towering over him because she's wearing a wig that is about 2 feet off her head.
That's also true. It's like, actually, it's not even so much the shoes, it's the freaking hair.
It's all of it. But she is just, there is no accident that she is, towering over him. They're giving a visual representation here, right, of what has happened in their relationship.
Yes.
They've gone from being partners to that mother and child dynamic that was introduced in that first scene where she's comforting him is now all of a sudden carrying through in a way that I don't think she saw coming.
Yeah. So she's like, "Oh, it's just the shoes." And then she says, "I really want you to sleep here tonight." He doesn't answer. And then she's just like, "All right, well, people are waiting downstairs." And she walks out. He then goes and he puts on his some sunglasses, almost like he's like trying to just get himself out of this thing. And the music changes to this like 80s, I don't know, like pop music, I guess. But then he takes the glasses off. So clearly it's like not working. But anyway, so from here, we're then downstairs with everyone at the party. Yas sees someone who she recognized, runs over to give her a hug, and we realize it's her aunt. So it's her father's sister.
It's
and
Claire
so she's
Forlani,
like,
who I haven't seen in ages.
who is it?
Claire Forlani.
Oh, I've never seen her in anything else. What was she in?
She was in Meet Joe Black.
Oh, I did see that. But that was like, I don't know, 20 years ago. A long
What's
time
the
ago.
premise of that movie?
I don't know.
So she is basically having a romance with Death the whole time, who has come to take her father away. And it's Brad Pitt, who, isn't really there.
Interesting. So anyway, so she says, Yas says, I'm so glad you're here. And then the off-camera dialogues, again, I don't know that this is all that helpful, but it's like, best to start macro, then go micro. And then someone else says, probably best not to joke about absent 40-year-olds in this house.
Yeah, no, the off-camera dialogue is just as important as it is here. I felt like that off-camera dialogue where they said, you got to start with the macro and go to the micro. I was clinging to that for life because I was like, are they going to talk a trade idea off camera so I can have something here that's finance? But no.
No.
I do think it's interesting, by the way, how happy Yasmin is to see her aunt. Like,
yes.
Again, where were you? I remember you being like, Yasmin's not an orphan. She has all these people in her family. You have this loving feeling towards your father's sister is shocking. She's so excited.
Mm-hmm. But I think that it just speaks to the fact that, like, I think she's so lonely. I mean, I think it's one of these things where, like, oh my God, any port in a storm, Yeah. So you see Otto there, by the way, who's like wearing an eye patch, and her aunt makes some comment about how someone's aged into his looks. And Yas just like, he's fucking disgusting. And then her aunt laughs. So her aunt is drinking a lot. Like, she has one glass of champagne, she goes to get another glass of champagne, and giddily, she's sort of telling Yas about how she met some like 29-year-old, and Yas is like, does Uncle Pierre or whatever the heck his name is know?
Piotr, which is a very Russian-coded name. So I thought it was interesting that she's married to someone who's very explicitly labeled to be Russian.
Seems like she's still married, but like she's cheating on him with some 29-year-old and makes these comments about how being ordered around by this 29-year-old is better than when she had her children. Like, she says, just hearing this 29-year-old giving me these little orders, like bend down so that I can see it, honestly is better than when any one of my children was born. I mean, I'm just kidding, but maybe I'm not. Does that make me a bad mother to want to be fucked? So like, yes, but also.
Well, no. So, I mean, here's the whole thing. Yasmin has been taken from this role of being partner and sexual equal in her role with Henry to now being Henry's mother, effectively. They have no sex life. He refuses to engage with her on that front. So Yasmin's hearing all this and thinking like, gosh, like, I remember the days when I used to have romance in my life when Henry and I were in love. And now I'm just the mom who she does want to have this sexual relationship with Henry and does it. So she's like reflecting on her own lot in life wistfully through the gross lens of her crazy aunt.
I just thought it was a very strange comparison to say better than when my children were born. Like, you and I have talked about this, that you were like, the day you get married, you will think is the best day until you have your kid. I'm sorry. There is no better day than that. And so the fact that, I don't know, like, to me, it actually did bother me hearing her be like it's gross. And I actually do think that does make you a bad mom. Like, again, not like wanting to be something other than just a mom and like all that other stuff, but like to use your kids in that way, in that sentence, like, I was like, that's awful. And so that was what I was reacting to, but whatever. So anyway, so her aunt then asks, how are the first few months of married life? And Yas says, I'm a spectator and a caregiver. Her aunt says, darling, that is not a partnership. You cannot become too afraid of what you'll lose. You'll become too pliant, and then you will lose. It is self-fulfilling. It doesn't matter how much he tells you that he loves you. You never give him unconditional love because they weaponize it. They worship you. They fill us up with their secrets. They load us up with insecurities, and then they fuck all their fears into us. And then they kill us over and over. Lovers, fathers, husbands, it's the historical common denominator. They love murdering women. A little dispassion, it could save you. Get off your knees. So there's so much in there. The first thing is she's basically saying, like, stop trying to love him nonstop. Set some boundaries, which I actually do agree with, right? It's the same thing we've talked about. And I see this with my 3-year-olds, right? You give too much, they will take and take and take because they're smart. They know, like, people need boundaries. This is one of the biggest things, like with children, that you learn as a parent. Kids feel safe with boundaries. You can't just continue to give them what they want. Like, permissive parenting doesn't work because people need to know what the limits are. And if they don't, it's like they just keep trying to push to see, where can I lose you? And then I did think it was interesting that she was like, they kill us over and over, lovers, fathers, husbands, because obviously she killed her father. So like Yasmin killed her dad, but she's saying, whatever, the men kill us. She says they love mourning women. Again, a little dispassion can save you. And then the get off your knees is going to become important, obviously, later.
But remember, she just was on her knees. She just was on her knees next to the tub, trying to get the passion back into their life. And I also found this comment very evocative of Harper in the last episode, saying, I can't be a punching bag for another man's fears. Meaning I can't be the receptacle for someone else's hopes, dreams, desires, everybody, because it was killing me. So just like Harper is reacting against that and doesn't want to enter into that relationship with Eric, if that's going to be the only outcome, I think her aunt is giving her this guidance about where this relationship with Henry is actually headed if she continues to be this unconditionally loving woman, because you are unconditionally loving not to your partner, but to your children.
Yeah. Yep. But again, the get off your knees, I did, because we see the aunt later. So like, whatever. All right. So from here, we then flash to being outside and a car is pulling up and it's Jennifer Bevan. So Yas actually comes out to meet her, which is obviously very big of her. And then they go into the kitchen. You see everyone preparing food. Lord Norton is there. And Yas then says, neat trick. Now, I wasn't sure what that is. Like, neat trick, meaning like, we're going to set up this like meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the meeting in the kitchen is like the old mob movies, right? They always like go around the back of the club and meet in the kitchen where like no one expects you to be and all that stuff. And Lord Norton is dressed in like a cardinal's outfit almost. So it reads like very Spanish Inquisition to me. Like,
oh, funny. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's just, hey, listen, that morning, Yasmin was talking about orchestrating all this, and now here it is playing out within 24 hours. She's not dressed for the party. She's not the only one who won't be dressed for the party, but she's in like, you know, a button down and slacks.
Yeah. So Lord Norton says, labor's tax plans are anti-business, says Industry Federation. And he shows her the newspaper with that as the headline. He says, we're just printing what we're told. Bevan says, but the prominence of that headline is alarmist. You're talking us into a recession. He says, I'm trying to stop you from governing us into a recession. I think about my readers and their oft-meager pay packets. Yas says, I think what Jenny is trying to say is that her party won't be bullied by your headlines just because they won't come kiss the ring. And Lord Norton says, you brought her here to do it for them. Yas says, Jenny's her own woman. And Lord Norton says, more plainly, Lisa Dern is a business secretary who's anti-business. And by the way, one of our YouTube subscribers, they reminded me that we actually did meet Laura Dern in the last season when Robert was talking before that committee. She was the one that they were like is a pit bull.
She was the one who was going in hard. That's a great call. I did not remember her because that episode was such a throwaway in my mind. So great call.
Okay. So Bevan then says, I don't know what it says about our state. And this is obviously a commentary on what is happening in the US and it's happening around the world in terms of the stratification. But she says, I don't know what it says about the state of our country, but the wealth divide between North and South Kensington is now wider than North and South Korea. But economics fundamentally is a question of the public humor and moods. And it is a question of tone. Currently, you still said it. And I see that even if Lisa chooses to imagine a world in which that is no longer the case. So she's clearly extending an olive branch. Yas is then kind of like looking from Jennifer Bevan to Lord Norton to see his reaction. And then we go to the next scene. Anything on this, or is this pretty self-explanatory?
No, I mean, Yasmin's beautifully playing both sides. So she's making it look to Jennifer Bevan like she's this neutral third party of like, hey, Jennifer is here of her own accord. She's her own woman. She's got all this agency. But we know that she's in league with Lord Norton and, you know, they're on the same side. And so I think that she's playing this beautifully. She has really come into her role as the Lady Muck that Lord Norton had hoped she'd be.
Yeah. So from here we then go, and it's the next scene is outside. And again, it's our girl Harper. She's walking into the house.
An oboe waltz playing, or you are the musician. I mean, maybe that isn't an oboe, but like it is the outside of this, you know, flickering candlelight and the estate. And Harper rolls up in freaking leather, right? Like she is not dressed for the Louis Vuitton. Like she is not there for it. It's just like actually in the finale of season 3 where she was in that like leather motorcycle jacket when everyone else in like the light-filled London townhouse, you know, is all in there like proper business clothes.
Yeah. So she walks into the party and then Henry Muck actually walks downstairs, but he has his flask. So he sees Whitney, and as he's coming down, Whitney is looking at basically like 3 different paintings. And you see the voice, which again, at first I didn't necessarily know it was Whitney, but he says, I understand this is the greatest collection of Turners outside Petworth, which I assume is a museum. Pentworth?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? Okay. Muck says, yeah, well, life wasn't a romance then, and it isn't a romance now. So, and then Whitney says, Nishi kills God. Factories started burning coal, and it was game over for community. And that was just the beginning for men like us. Henry's kind of like, men like us? Like, we're not the same. And Whitney says, you want something you don't have, and I want everything you have already. That's all the fraternity we need. Henry then says, and this I thought was so funny, he goes, my wife suggested you wanted to offer me some small non-exec role at Tender. Whitney says, we're in the process of doing an executive parade for CEO, but I convinced my board that we could expedite it. Move fast and break things is fine for the first decade of a company, but longevity in Britain is about access. I am building a one-stop shop, an in-your-pocket democratic financial institution for everyone from the working man to the wealthiest plutocrat inclusive. To call this a bank would be to undersell it. It's a bank killer. And I need a partner, a native partner, a CEO who can triangulate our political and media message. You started your rehabilitation in politics. I want you to finish it with me. And Henry just looks confused. Whitney then says, and all we have is that boat, looking at the boat in the painting, and then he walks away. So, and actually I should add, at this point, Henry just takes his flask and just like pouring it down his mouth. Like he's just like doubting the whole thing. But like, okay, I am so confused here because it makes sense a little bit that he would want Henry Muck because he has both the newspaper element, like they control the media, and he has the access to this like wealthy, influential like group of people, Otto Mostyn, etc. But he is a fucking basket case. So like he's lost his mind. He's like suicidal. He's like so much worse. It's like you thought that freaking Jonah was bad. I mean, this guy is like a complete disaster. And he's kind of like, yeah, no non-exec role for you. We wanted to bring you in as CEO. And Henry is shocked as well.
Well, I think there's a couple things here. First of all, when you think about who Henry is as a figurehead, right? This is someone who clearly is not in control of his own faculties. It is very easy to have someone like him, God forbid something goes wrong, to pin blame on should it arise.
That's what I was,
But I think there's a much deeper theme here too. He calls Henry a native partner. We've heard these lines from Jonah and Whitney about making all these acquisitions, partnering with native businesses in African countries. So now we hear about partnering with this native institution in Britain. So I think it's so important to remember that Whitney is American. And there's this theme that there's been throughout the past 2 seasons about colonizing, right? Last season, it was whose imperialism is better, the British or the Gulf. And now it's, okay, we have this American by nature who is coming in and colonizing Britain and Africa, doing it in a stealthy way by building these partnerships with consenting, quote unquote, native organizations. Henry being the one in Britain and whomever Whitney's been doing business with that we don't know yet, obviously, in Africa. But also, so obviously, like, I was like, okay, I got to do something with this episode. I was an art history minor, technically. So Turner is one of my favorite painters of all time. He is referred to as like the painter of light. So he does light in landscapes like Rembrandt and Vermeer did light in portraits. Now, this isn't one of my favorite works of art by Turner. I wasn't familiar with this one. This is one of his early ones, actually. But I think that, listen, like the landscapes he's most known for doing are boats on the sea. This is like a classic work. So I think some of the themes here that they're pointing out using this painting is there's like the diminutive scale of man's agency relative to nature. And we had earlier Lord Norton talking about like Henry finding his way out of the woods. Like he does. He's this little like lost puppy, if you will. And these fishermen on this boat, they look like they're in very choppy seas, right? There's this narrative tension of like, will they or won't they make it? And what's also interesting about the painting is all of the choppy waters are actually closest to the shore. If you look out further in the background of the painting, the ocean is calm as you get further out into the sea, and all the clouds are clustered at the forefront, and there's the big bright light of the moon. So I think it's an interesting metaphor. Again, I have no idea what they were trying to use this painting for, but that like the choppy waters are closer to home. Henry is drowning metaphorically closest to home. And there's this lifeline being offered by Whitney of like, come be the CEO of this business, get out from this house, get out from drowning in your family history and come out into the world where there's this path out of the woods, into the light, out of the dark for you, Henry. Also, Turner, like when he says it wasn't all that romantic then and it isn't all that romantic now, just to be clear, like when we categorize paintings, Turner was an English romantic painter. And so when he's talking about kind of the evolution of philosophy through Nietzsche, whatever, we're talking about the destruction of the sense of shared values and shared communities. And what Whitney is saying is he's like, we don't need any big shared sacred framework for going into business together. Our shared values are just capitalism, right? It's just, hey, listen, I have what you want and you have what I want. What else do we need, right? And this is the solution that Henry needs. Why mope around when there's a capitalist solution to your ennui, effectively?
Yeah. Right? Well, it's interesting too. I mean, I do think that the thing that is then helpful for Whitney is, I mean, this is someone that like is so pliant and that he can make do whatever he wants.
Correct.
Again, all that he needs. And it's funny because someone literally in our, again, on the YouTube channel asked, do you think that Whitney is supposed to be Sam Altman? And I was like, absolutely not. Like Sam Altman, never in a million years is he going into a partnership and not the freaking CEO. You know what I mean? Like he's not the number two, but maybe there's a little bit of it because again, like he's number two in name only, not obviously when he was with Jonah, but now when he's with Henry Muck, he gets all the benefits again of the access of the political like influence and everything. Whitney is the one who can then be driving the ship because I mean, he can do whatever he wants with him, you know?
Absolutely. I think that's 100% what Whitney is trying to do here. Whitney does not crave the spotlight. Whitney does not want to be a star. Whitney wants to skulk around in the shadows and do whatever Whitney's going to do and have someone else be a public figurehead. And who better than this person who has all of his own baggage and all of his own stuff and kind of plausible deniability, if you will.
Yep. 100%. So from here, we just saw he started to chug the freaking vodka or whatever he's drinking. And then the next scene, he's in his bedroom doing blow. He also has taken off his costume. Yas walks in and is just like, why the fuck aren't you dressed? And
this scene, by the way, is extremely claustrophobic and done with a handheld camera in one take. It is an amazing
wow. Scene. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. The writers, the creators have definitely kind of massively upped their game in terms, and by the way, the actors as well. I mean, like Yas, I thought was phenomenal.
This scene between Yasmin and Henry is outstanding. We're all sitting here boo-hooing because there's no finance in this scene, but it is a beautifully scripted, acted, directed scene that must have been very challenging to perform.
I mean, I can't even imagine. So, like I said, he has taken off his costume and Yas takes his clothes, throws it at him and is like, for fuck's sake, you need me to dress you now like you're a fucking infant? He says, yeah, and you're engineering meetings for me. Yas is like, if someone admires your talents enough to offer you a new purpose in life, because again, she wants him to like have a fucking reason to live. And
but
Henry's
also,
just like,
again,
talent?
You have talent, you have purpose. That was Yasmin's whole thing.
Yes. And Henry says, talent? What fucking talent? Tell me, why did we buy that shed in Wakefield if you didn't even vote for me? Which is actually a big reveal. And she says, oh, grow up. I never voted. What fucking difference does my vote make? And Henry says, what, for the proletariat? Oh, I'm sorry, too close to home? Yas is like, what does that mean? And Henry says, it means my circumstances are fixed. They're fucking cast iron. There's only one consequential thing I can do with my life. Yas is just like, what is this suicide as poetry bullshit? Do you realize that Oblivion won't be macho? It won't be cinematic. You stupid fucking idiot. It will be procedural. It will be boring. It will be small. Another event for me to organize. A few tears, a black dress, and then the rest of my fucking life. Because despite loving you, which I still think I do, Henry, I will forget you. I will fucking forget you. I promise you. He says, you don't seem to understand. I can't get out from under this. And Yas says, where was the romance in your father's death? Where was the fucking glamour in that? You told me he walked out the front door one morning and he was alone. That's not true, is it, Henry? Your uncle told me. He also told me that he frittered everything away and lived here under his brother-in-law's charity. And Henry just screams, shut the fuck up. You don't understand what you're talking about. She then pushes him off her. And she says, don't touch me. You want to be so self-involved and self-pitying that you are, look at you, you're disabled, not me. And then she says, if you don't take Whitney's offer, we are going to have a serious conversation. And it won't be emotional like this. It will be practical. Do you hear me? And Henry asks, well, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Walk back into the slur of your family's name? We have a watertight prenup. And Yas says, roll up your sleeve. And as he does it, you can see that there's just like bruises and like track marks on his arm. She nods and said, there's a clause in our prenup about you using. And he says, what about the adultery clause? And she just gets so speechless and angry when he says this, because she's like, yes, I have been unfulfilled, but I've never been unfaithful. You are in control, no one else. I can't do fucking anything. Please, Henry, please put on your big boy pants and face our public. And then as Yas is about to walk away, she then comes back and says, when we were engaged, you couldn't keep your hands off me. I mean, there are a million reasons that I fucking hate your drug use and your sad self-regard. But right now, I mean, it's simply because it fucking castrates you. And she like grabs his crotch. She says, if you can't find it in yourself to fuck me, and then she's like, fuck me, like basically like I am, she says, I mean, maybe you're already fucking dead. She then walks out. And then he looks at his arm, which again has those track marks. He then goes to get the box of whatever these pills are. And then he takes out a baggie and he kind of like does some of it, what I assume are just like incredibly hardcore drugs, like harder core than anything else that he's done. Yeah. But there is so much to the scene. I did love the way that she portrayed the reality of suicide, where it's like people have this glamorized view. And she's like, no, it's fucking boring. It's procedural. It's another event. And then I'm going to fucking forget you. And I love that. I thought it was just beautifully written. I thought it was beautifully acted. And the other point too, is that we find out that he saw his dad take his own life and it probably fucked him up. And the other thing is we know that Lord Norton is not his dad's brother, because I think that one of the whole things is that this is getting to this idea that, again, depression is genetic. And Lord Norton doesn't have that because he's not actually related to Henry's father.
Henry is positioning himself as, I have nowhere to go but down. There's nothing else for me. My life is written in stone as far as like how far I can ascend within society and what I can accomplish. The only thing for me to do that could be greater is this epic thing of killing myself. Whereas you, Yasmin, you are climbing through me. You have so much. And she's like, no, you are not at the pinnacle of your life that you think you are, where all you can go is down. You know what I'm saying? There is more that you can accomplish. You should be striving.
Yeah. All right. So from here, we then go to the next scene where everyone is at the dinner. It's the same table that obviously we're at for Lord Norton's birthday. And Henry walks in. And when this does, you hear the off-camera dialogue. Someone says, every time a socialist sees something big and powerful, they try to nationalize it. And then someone else adds, reform has such an ugly ring to it. But of course, so does the doorbell when ... Anyway, so then as he walks in, someone's like, the little prince, where the fuck have you been? About fucking time. And then they all start to clap as he walks in. And someone says, silly tosser, you're late for your own fucking funeral. Interesting choice of words. Mm-hmm. Henry then says, holy shit. And then he starts sort of laughing really creepily because he sees Jennifer Bevan. And he goes up and he's like, what the fuck is wrong with her? And he takes off his glasses as he looks at her. And he says, you look like the woman I lost the election to. Now, who the fuck invited you? Already whored yourself out to my uncle, I see. Good for you. And Yas looks like she's about to say something, but then Henry goes in for like a mouth kiss with Jennifer Bevan, obviously like wildly just okay. Lord Norton says, you're embarrassing yourself. And then Henry says, well, that's a pity because I fucking love you. And I know I've been a disappointment to you. But he's looking at Lord Norton when he says that. And then he turns to Yasmin and he says, I'm sorry I couldn't have been more of the man that you needed me to be. And then he grabs his crotch, meaning like we haven't been sleeping together. Mm-hmm. So someone then comes over and gives him this huge bear hug. And Henry looks super excited to see him and says, I didn't know you were coming. And the man says, good. Look how happy you are to see me. The added spice of surprise. Henry says, long journey, Commander. And then again, that's one of the titles of the episode. And he says, hellish, I need the strongest of waters. Henry says, you don't want to say hello to anyone, like anyone at the table? And he says, please don't make me. Fuck no, that can wait. And Henry then says, should we get the hell out of here? They want to go to some bar, but they walk off. And Yasmin then, you see, it goes back to Yasmin, who just sort of is like so embarrassed, like, oh my God, turns to Lord Norton. And he then stands up and he says, I'm so sorry this family hates birthdays, which by the way, like not true because we literally saw a birthday in the prior season of the finale and it was like wonderful and grand. And then here it's like,
yeah, Lord Norton was just fine with his birthday.
So, but yeah. So you said when this happened, you knew exactly where this was going from the moment you saw this guy.
Nobody else is looking at this guy. He's not talking to anyone. This is a beautiful mind, sixth sense situation. This guy clearly doesn't exist. We've never seen this character before. Everyone else horrified. Nobody's reacting to this person whatsoever. There's also this moment though, after Henry and the commander run off, that Yas, who does she look to after she looks to Lord Norton? She looks to Harper. And she's just like,
oh yeah,
I'm so sorry. Like,
yeah, I think she like touches her head. Like,
sucks to be you, Like, so there is that. Who does she look to for like her last emotional lifeline? It's Harper, which I thought was a nice touch.
Love it. All right. So from here, they're then at a nightclub, and Henry is asking this random dude, like, where did you land work-wise? Can we just say who it is? Because, like, it's so obvious. Or should we save that? It's his dad. Like,
it's obviously his dad the whole time.
But,
so that's what was, like, unintentionally funny to me about this, is because there was no surprise, right? It was very obvious that this character who doesn't interact with anyone, who suddenly comes out right after Henry has consumed more drink and drugs than, is likely enough to kill him anyways. It's very obvious that this is a hallucination.
Yeah. So his dad says, oh, fuck, I don't know. Between things, gainful employment is a bourgeois pursuit. I don't know. Where the fuck does commander come from? Imagine me with the discipline to be a military man. But again, that is the title of the episode. So, like, why do they call him commander? That I didn't understand.
I don't either. I didn't know where that came from. That was never evident to me. But yes, he is the commander of the Commander and the Gray Lady. The Gray Lady we know is a ghost. So the commander is obviously a ghost. So the second they said commander, knowing the Gray Lady is a ghost too. That was our other giant screaming clue.
Fair. So Henry then says, yeah, I sort of feel like if you don't work, I may as well die. Don't you? And I will add, because this is like this is a theme through this whole episode. I actually think like the main reason that they had to give this an entire episode is I think they're trying to also like set up the stakes for what's going to happen if things go wrong for Henry Muck, if he is now at the helm of this company. And like the stakes that Harper, when she screwed over Yas last season, Yas lost her job. This season, if they're then going to be going after Tender and he is at the helm of it, and we know like how much purpose work does, because that's this whole theme through this whole episode. I think that's why they felt that they needed to give it this big
They
thing.
needed to do this insight into Henry Muck's state of mind. That wasn't just but also they need to make you care about him, because without this episode, Henry was just a supporting character last season who, when they were done with the Lumi headline, and that
you were like, get rid of him.
Story, I was like, that's it. I don't see what else we stand to gain from this character. So that's why they had to rehabilitate, in so many words, this character and give him this deeper meaning and backstory, because otherwise you're like, why do they have the random guy from Lumi being the CEO? No one cares. So they needed to make you just as emotionally attached to Henry Muck as to Yasmin, Harper, Eric, all these other people, because the stakes need to feel that high.
Yeah. So then they continue to go on, and the father makes a comment about like some of the whatever. What does he say? The barmaids here.
He's acting like the angel and the devil on Henry's shoulders very clearly in this conversation. He's encouraging to sleep with one of the girls in the local village, right? And Henry's like, I don't have much of a libido. And the guy's giving this big pep talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finally at the end of it, he grabs his face and he says, none of this darkness shit. So it's like this figure that he's talking to is trying to pull him out of his worst self.
Yeah. But I also thought that there's a little bit of, you see the conscience from Henry, because that's one of the things that we do see a lot of, is I do think he has a conscience. I do think he wants to be good. And I think that he feels so guilty that he has been given all these things and he can't even do anything with it. And he's sort of like, why do I deserve this? All this kind of stuff. But I also do think, even if he had a libido, I don't think he would cheat on Yasmin. Because he even says, like at one point, the guy says, sleeping with a model is amazing. You're not living if you're not doing whatever to maximize pleasure. And Henry goes, even if you cause pain. So I did also think that you see a lot more of just the conscious, like he seems like he wants to do good. So then from here, we then go back to the next scene where we have Yas and Harper doing coke together. And Harper's like, you guys seem so happy at the wedding. And Yas says that's what's so fucked up, that they were, and that they had this great sex life and everything was wonderful. Harper then says, like pointing at the castle, she's like, I just feel like all of this stuff is not going to get you the respect you deserve. And Yas is just like, why the hell would you say something like that to me? So then she says, why are you here? And Harper's like, what do you mean? You invited me. I have business interests here. And clearly you're lonely. And Yas says, you're fucking lonely. And Harper's just like, yeah, so what, I am. Like, she's just like, okay. This whole season so far, Harper has been so open, non-manipulative, like just, this is what I am. Take me or leave me. And I fucking love it. But anyway, so Yasmin says, well, you can do what you want. And then she does some more coke, but Harper then leaves. Jennifer Bevan comes in and says that she wanted to thank Yasmin for helping her. And Yasmin asks Jennifer Bevan if she's okay. And Jennifer Bevan's like, are you okay? Because she feels like, oh my God, like you just had to watch your husband go through this. Like, yeah, I got like kissed and like someone
Assaulted.
made out, assaulted. Yeah, I guess that's a better way, better use the term. But your husband is like basically going crazy. Anyway, Yas then changes the subject and she's like, do you want some Coke? And Jennifer Bevan's like, no, like I'm okay. I haven't done that since uni. And then whatever, scene ends. So from here, we then see Harper and Whitney. And she says to Whitney, you know what I do, right? And Whitney says, tell me. Harper says, I work for a fund. And he says, you used to work at a fund. Is there something you wanted to ask me? And Harper asks, you built Tinder with Jonah, right? How do you make a work relationship long and lasting? Like, because asking about her and Eric, because again, she like wants to.
But also, remember, she met Yasmin at work. So I do think this is a question about Eric, but she has just come from that convo with Yasmin. So in my mind, I don't think this is not about Yasmin as well. Obviously, their friendship is, forever doomed to be a mess. Yes, this is primarily about Eric, but it is also, to me, evocative of that.
But we then, this whole little interaction gives us a peek into Whitney, the character. So Whitney says about Jonah, he was a mature MBA, post-computer science, post a lot of other shit when we met. He was a great fundraiser. And Harper says, those doors went open to you? Whitney says, I grew up poor. Harper says, you don't read that way. Whitney says, I had a venture pre-Stanford, funeral homes. I noticed many had overhead and were running direct cremation-only sub-brands. So I bought one cheap. Cut embalming, too expensive. Flowers too. Simple wooden box, no fancy casket. People like to think of funerals as these loving, well-attended, retrospective things. But that's a fucking myth. Back to the same thing that Yas had been saying.
But before you get there, this is a great scene. We can get into unpacking all of this. But before that, may I just point out, dear listener, that in one of our early episodes, we retold the story of how Kristen was interviewing some poor Morgan Stanley hopeful and asked him if he could invest in any business, what would it be? And the poor guy, quaking in his boots, was like, I don't know, a startup? And she was like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. You should invest in funeral homes, steady state cash flow businesses. So
everyone dies.
The whole time I was watching this, I was like, Kristen, there you go. You gave this advice to Whitney and he invested in funeral homes.
Oh my God, little niche. So as he's saying this, by the way, back to like our American Psycho thing, I mean, the creepy music comes in.
He's also like, the camera is zooming in on Harper's face, but he is moving physically into her space, very close. And Harper's facial expressions are very telling. She is keeping cool, calm, and collected during this, but he is telling her the story of how he bought a business that takes care of dead bodies in this extremely cold, eerie way with the music, with the camera angles, and it feels very
scary.
Yeah.
Harper's just like, I mean, it's resourceful. And so Whitney says, simply a volume play. Margins are better burning bodies than burying them. Again, the creepy music continues as he's talking about this. And he says, are you going to tuck me in tonight? And she's kind of like, no, thanks. Not tonight. And then he says good night and they walk off. But the whole...
No, like the camera stays on Harper's face as he walks off because she says in this like high breathy voice, like, maybe another time. And as he's walking off, she's got that smile. And then as he fully walks off, she's like,
oh God.
Who is that psycho I was just talking to? Because remember, she has this seed planted by Charlie Heaton's character that
Jim.
These people would do anything to keep people from getting close to them. So it's very clear that this was an exercise in sussing out, hey, is Whitney part of the problem or was it Jonah? And like, is Jonah the one who was the sketchy one and now he's gone? Or is Whitney the person here who's willing to do anything? And I think hearing about his little funeral home venture, even though he doesn't say anything, when you look at the text of the conversation, it was just like, oh yeah, if you read it in a different voice with no music and you had our house is a happy little house playing in the background, you'd be like, oh, what a great business idea, Kristen Kelly, interviewing Anish circa 2010.
No. This was like, it was, I don't even know why this was a thing. It was like the whole, there was probably some like research report I read about how we were going into recession. Remember, this was like 2008 that I was interviewing and it was like recession. And so it was like, well, what's the one thing that is recession proof? So it's not like this was a freaking original thought that I had as a 22-year-old interviewing some poor guy who was about to try to get a job at Morgan Stanley. This was like, nothing is certain except for death and taxes. So anyway, so the next scene, we are now back at the house and it wasn't exactly discordant music. I kind of wish I had written down like what the actual music was because I did like how they had all the music changes throughout this episode.
They had the waltz when Harper was coming in. And then as Harper is going to talk to Whitney, they have this song that's like, let's keep dancing. So it's like very clear that they're going to be dancing together around whatever's going on. Yeah. But so Yasmin is like walking around the house and like touching the wall for stability. Now we know she's just done a bunch of cocaine, but I think of that more as the behavior of someone who's drunk. Again, I don't really know how to discern like different behaviors or whatever, but she looks just totally disoriented. Like she's like clutching the wall to even like keep her upright.
Yeah. And so she walks downstairs and she sees her aunt on her knees with Otto. I will just leave it there. And then he then says, mint for the cock breath, makes another comment, says, you've got a better mouth than your brother. Yas hears all this and is obviously just horrified, walks away.
So just to be clear, we now know that Otto had a sexual relationship with Yasmin's father.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if this was a joke, but maybe. Is that you think that was supposed to be, like, I thought it was supposed to be kind of like your mama, you know? You thought it was like a real thing?
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like,
yeah, fair. It's again, like poor Yasmin, like it's just so fucking bad in so many levels. Like just,
I think getting to what her aunt later suggests.
Fair. Oh yeah.
I don't think it's beyond the realm of reasonable suggestion.
Also true. All right. So then next scene, we're back at the pub with Henry and his dad. And there's some guy there who's a priest. And he says, you want to know about Christ's best miracle? He says to have 12 good friends in your 30s and only one of them sees fit to betray you, which I thought was amazing.
Which is also sadly like true.
Yeah, we'll have it. I mean, I don't know.
12 we're now in your late 30s. Well, early 30s, I guess.
Like I feel like by the time you're in your late 30s, early 40s, like you've
12
got
friends.
Yeah, you've got a few close friends. Actually, no, guys do. I will say, it's like I look at my husband, and he has like a lot of friends. He's a much bigger social network, but I feel like I mean, my group of friends, like I have very strong connections with a select group of friends, and he just has like I think that's very typical of men versus women relationships.
My experience is similar to yours. I don't know how to make broad generalizations because I don't know too many men these days and like what their habits are.
Like, also true.
I don't like talk to dudes and be like, tell me about your friends. But my husband's the same way. He's got like crew after like this group text, that group text, this fantasy football league, that fantasy football league, the guys from the office, the that.
The golfing buddies, the other golfing buddies.
Got, like, 3 group chats, right? Each with 3 women in them, and like that's it.
I know. I just have like my messaging with you, my messaging with a few other friends, like, you know, and it's almost like I do like the singles, but yeah. Anyway, so Henry then goes over to one of the women who we now recognize as Molly, who's the one who was the maid who was opening the curtains and all that. And he asks if he can join her. And she says, Sir Henry. He says, no need for titles tonight. Everyone's off the clock. But someone else says, all equal indeed.
They say all equal indeed because he's buys around for the bar, just like Rishi did at the beginning of the last episode. So he's ingratiating. This is the pub in the neighborhood where he is Lord Henry. So he's trying to ingratiate himself to the public here the same way Rishi was trying to ingratiate himself into the higher status than his. It's the opposite with Henry here.
Yeah. And so Henry says the factory boss doling out tuppence as a Christmas bonus. By the way, this is now the Christmas episode. We know that for real a little bit later.
Christmas episode.
Yeah.
We saw the lights in the pub, and I was like, "Oh, they have Christmas lights because it's like a dive bar."
Still have
so they have Christmas lights up, right?
Yeah. We will probably have Christmas lights up, especially in my kids' bedroom.
Now we know that Henry's birthday is Christmas.
Mm-hmm. So Henry, by the way, now in response to his dad making this comment, says, give it a rest, old boy. So I think it's like he's now kind of getting a little bit annoyed with his father's, like the voices inside his head with the ghost. Molly says, sorry, Henry, I have a confession to make. Basically, she hid the box of his drugs. Like, sorry if I overstepped. And Henry replies, I could fire you for that. So clearly, no, this is not just like no titles tonight. Like he says, I could fire you. So the priest then says to Henry, you don't remember me, do you? I baptized you and I married your parents. He says, I was the parish priest here for a while, but I moved back to St. Mary's in Dundee. Well, looks like you grew up, right? And then he says, but then the Lord saw fit to move me back to the seat in the pub to celebrate his son's birth with all of his beautiful sons and daughters. So I wonder if that was the Lord Norton, because initially when I first heard it, I thought it was like the Lord, like God had but then it was like the Lord Norton, because talking about his sons and daughters, and the only person that, I mean, we know Lord Norton only has daughters. So actually, I don't know who he's talking about, but he says with all his sons and daughters.
It's Christ our Lord's birthday for the priest. It's Henry's birthday. Yeah. And who else we find out like may not share this birthday, but whose birthday was.
Yeah. So his father, But I do. So do you think that it was because he says, then the Lord saw fit to move me back to this seat in the pub to celebrate his son's birth. Oh, you're right. Okay. So basically like God saw fit to move me back to this seat in this pub to celebrate Christmas.
Christ's birth. But also the Lord, the prior Lord of the manor was Henry's father. And it's Henry's birthday as well.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. So some guy is then trying to kiss Molly, who to your point is probably her boyfriend. Henry sees him doing that and is just like, hey mate, why don't you give that a rest? She's not interested. And the guy then says, rich from you. So Molly then apologizes for him and says, I'm sorry. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's drunk, pissed. And I wrote bad dude tells him, says, tell him about his wife, Molly. And Molly's like, George, shut up. I think you should leave. And George then says, so again, the boyfriend, his name is George, says a whole bunch of horrible shit about Yas. Calls her
he says all these terrible things about her, basically insinuating that she's super low class, that she's been like run through. But he also says that she floats around the house all sad and angry because she knows she doesn't belong in the house, which is what Henry has been kind of throwing at Yasmin. Like, what are you going to do if you aren't here? Like, I am this high station and you voted for the proletariat, you know, like you are lesser than. And this obviously angers Henry because he's talking shit about his wife. But these are all the things that Henry has thrown at Yasmin. It's the same things he was saying to her. Oh, she's figuring out her place. She's learning here. Everyone needs to fulfill their function. She doesn't get it.
But also, I thought it was interesting that floating about the house is such like a ghosty way to describe how someone moves around. And also, you made the point about like the gray lady. I mean, she has like that gray hair. And this is a lot of episode about her. So I also initially, when I first started watching, thought the gray lady was Yas. And it's like Yas versus the commander. And it's like, which is going to win? Where it's like the commander trying to kill him and her trying to save him. So that was my other read is like, again, I don't. So that was my little, whatever, my interpretation. Anyway, after he says this, the dad says to Henry, shine a shoes, boy. And then Henry beats the crap out of this guy. And after he does that, Henry's dad says to him, I bet that's the best you've felt in ages. So little devil on his shoulder, encouraging him to be like, you know, do something that, by the way, it didn't even dawn me, but he says something later that like could literally get him thrown in jail, by the way.
Right.
So we're back to the scene with Yas and her aunt. And the aunt comes in and you see Yas basically having all of her belongings shuttled out of the house. And Yas says, I actually don't think you should be here. And the aunt is so confused because she's like, you just were so happy to see me. And like, things have been great. It's the middle of the night. Yas says, why didn't you come to Charles's funeral? And again, it's sort of interesting because we've had the conversation about funerals, about death, about all this stuff. And her aunt says, I'm sorry, what? You know, life, darling, life got in the way. And Yas is like, no, you worshiped him. I mean, despite what everyone else said, you always told me that he walked on water. And Yas says to them to help, because again, all these people trying to like help. She said, sorry, can you leave us? And then Yas says to her aunt, you must have heard the rumors about his tastes. Her aunt says, I mean, the culture is just, it's sensationalizing the actions of these high profile men, right? So apologetic. Again, back to the Ghislaine Maxwell kind of thing. She says, I mean, it just fits the orthodoxy. It's too facile. And Yas says, how convenient. Her aunt says, I mean, your father, my brother, he was a true eccentric. He was a bon vivant. He didn't care about life's borders or boundaries. He just didn't care. I'm trying to like absolutely do the accent. But Yas was like, with you? And she looks kind of stunned and then says, we had a very bohemian childhood. It was a different time. Basically meaning,
no, what time? Never. In what time was like incest okay?
I mean, well, you are talking about freaking,
I guess the court of Louis XIV, where we have everyone, you know, marrying the
like that's the whole. I mean,
and you know,
that is actually a good point. I mean, never fine, but also in these like royal families. So I don't know, but I don't think that's what they're saying.
Not in the time of the 60s.
No, not in the 60s. Maybe in like the 1600s. Like, yeah. So Yasmin says, well, for all your posturing successes, I mean, you just couldn't wait to be their whore again. Howdy taste, talking about Otto. And now the aunt realizes what happened, that Yas saw her. And she then takes the mint out of her mouth, throws it at Yas and says, you tell me. Yas is just like, with so much disdain, that's fucking pathetic. And the aunt's like, then like getting ready to go. She goes, oh, your father told me that he was going to terminate you till he found out you were a girl. So Yas just laughs, like cannot believe she said that to her. She goes, right. I mean, there's no taxis at this time. And I think it's going to be quite a cold night. Merry Christmas. And then you start to hear Silent Night playing. Back to the thing we talked about last season where there was a lot of there was a lot of preferences for a son, right? There was the comment with Rishi when he had his son, congrats on the sex, congrats on the boy. Then there was Lord Norton saying his father really wanted a son to leave his inheritance. And then now this season, it's a little bit flipped. It's like your dad was going to terminate you until he found out you were a girl. And I wasn't really sure what to make of that. Like, was it because he knew he was sick and he didn't want to have almost like the opposite, like what happened with Henry, where it's like Henry's dad had this mental illness and like he could have prevented Henry from feeling this way had he just had a vasectomy? Was it that? Like, what did you take that to mean?
I thought it was the most nefarious purpose, which is ultimately him abusing her. Yes.
Oh, God.
This is disgusting. From the woman who grew up with him and knew his nature through her childhood, through whatever sexual encounters they had together.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I took that
wild.
To. Yes.
Again, I had the more charitable. No, like you're 100% right. That's so disgusting.
Yeah,
Holy
that's why Yasmin's like, enjoy your night outside on Christmas in the UK.
Oh my God. And the aunt is basically then also fucking admitting that she knew that he was abusing her.
Correct. That's how I took it.
Holy shit. No, you're 100% right. That is 100% the read. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So yes,
we now have this theme of I wish I'd never been born from both Henry and Yasmin under these circumstances. We've got Henry saying the kindest thing would have been a vasectomy. Yasmin facing down the notion that she was due to be terminated had she not been born for this nefarious purpose. This is both of them confronting, what if I'd never been born? Like, would I be better off dead? And Yasmin doesn't go down the same path that Henry does, right? Like she has chosen life and she has chosen to kill the father who like brought her into this world for this awful. And like, by the way, if we found out that the aunt froze to death with hypothermia, she would have killed his sister too for the same crime.
Talk about like,
and been totally justified in my view. These people are awful.
Oh my God. So then Yas walks upstairs. Now I did not understand why she never went to the funeral. That is an interesting point. She says life got in the way. Do we think that's actually why, or do we think there was some other reason?
Well, also we had a funeral. Like I didn't know we had a funeral. I didn't know that Yasmin went to the funeral. Like it all.
Fair.
Yasmin is not mourning this dude. I wouldn't have been surprised if Yasmin didn't go to the funeral. I'd be like, fuck off. What am I doing here? This guy ruined my reputation. He's terrible. Like, what? I killed him. You know? Like, unless you're going to like throw everyone off the set that you
appearances,
killed him.
Which I actually think she probably would have done because she didn't want anyone to like think that. But yeah. So
yeah. I mean, the introduction of the aunt here felt like this was written all after the fact, that she was not like part of the, it was like, ooh, what else can we do?
Yeah. So it almost should have been like the mother came back. Because the mom, by the way, like, where is her mom? Her mom is just like off. Anyway, so Yasmin walks upstairs and she sees Haley just like sleeping randomly on a bench in the hallway. And Yas is like, oh, you're Whitney's assistant, right? Haley says, I'm sorry, my lady. Yas says, I'll get a room fixed up for you. Like, you don't have to sleep on the fucking bench. And Haley says,
but by the way, her attitude when she says that is like, just another procedure I have to follow. Just another thing I have to do. I'll get a room made up for you. Like, back to my chores as lady of the house.
Right. And Haley says, or I could just get in with you. And Yas kind of thinks about it and says, okay, then. And Haley's like, oh, no. I was kidding. And Yas is like, okay, then. So I'll get a room made up. And yeah, see.
But this is a really interesting scene because Yasmin has just opened the door to something with Haley. And as Yasmin leaves, Haley is smiling to herself. First of all, pretty ballsy of Haley to make that joke to the lady of the house, to be like, maybe I'll just sleep in your room, right? Like
in your bed.
Pretty bold joke to make to the hostess of the party, who is this like lady, to be like, why don't we sleep together? Yeah. Like, so again, good for Haley, Haley just has balls galore as far as I can tell every time we see her being like, I got this because of my talent. Like, why don't I sleep with you?
Yeah. So from here, we're back at the pub. And this reminded me a little bit of like after James Ashford has the stroke and we don't know if he's dead. It's kind of similar because they're back here and you hear someone say, he'll clean up just fine. But Henry says, shouldn't you call the police or something? It reminded me of he wanted a boundary. He beat the shit out of this guy, but he wanted there to be consequences.
Correct.
And the bartender's like, don't worry about it, sir. We all know it was self-defense. And he sees Molly, by the way, and then asks if he wants a pint. And the priest, by the way, is then there with him. And he says, I buried your father, you know. And Henry just is like, excuse me? And the priest says, I presided over his funeral service. Henry looks at the priest and the priest says, I see you remember my face a little more now because I remember yours then. You underestimate a child's maturity at your peril. He says, when the first sod fell on his casket, I could see you thinking that could be my lot. Henry then says, talking to his dad, Commander, can I get you another? Again, the dad doesn't say anything. And obviously the priest doesn't see him because he's a fucking ghost. But the priest still talks to him and says, I wish I'd gotten to you on that day and said something. Words that I turned into comfort for when the dark was at the door. Henry then still looking at his dad, but the priest whispers in his ear something we can't see, and there's no closed caption for it yet. We do see it a little bit later.
One thing, I didn't think of this until now. The word commander, someone who gives commands. This ghost of his father has been the one directing Henry through this entire encounter. And I think potentially he gives him the name commander because this has been the little general inside his head directing him down this path, commanding him to go down this suicidal path.
That's a good read. Because to your point, I'm like, what else is there? Like, he's not a military man. He literally laughed at that. So what else is there? And I think like that is spot on. Yeah. Yeah. So now the next scene we're outside with the commander and Henry. And I'm watching it like this because I don't like to see gross stuff. But the dad says, good to see you again. Thoroughly enjoyable diversion. Henry says, I could do with never seeing you again. The man says, no, you'll see me soon. Very ominous like. He says, I feel we know each other well enough. The music, like I said, is ominous to also let you know that it's like, this is,
By the way, I think this was supposed to be the reveal, at which point I was like,
You're like, I already knew this. Stop. Yeah. So he says, will you let me show you where it hurts? And then like he showed him his neck. Like I said, I'm literally every single thing I'm watching it like this. I have a freaking screen over it because I just don't want to see what it is. So I, at this point, still don't know like how he killed himself. I'm just like something with his neck.
Gash in his neck right here.
From like hanging, I'm sure.
I think he hung himself. So I think he hung himself or potentially even like accidentally chopped his own head off in doing so.
Sorry, I'm not like trying to laugh, but did you watch Beetlejuice too?
Of course.
Okay, because you know how like Charles, the dad, like his head gets chopped off by a, but then he's walking around without a head. So I was like, but if he had his head chopped off, like shouldn't he be headless?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I'll get to my theory about how he killed himself because at this point I still thought he had shot himself because of Henry going to get the gun from the armory.
I thought it from last season, the way that he describes it. I don't know why. I just thought he had like walked out and shot himself. But maybe that's just sort of like the trope of how like the man kills himself.
But his exact language about what he said about his dad going out onto the moor, which we didn't do, or I didn't do at least. But I had thought he shot himself. So then I was like, oh, did he like shoot himself in the neck? But that seems like kind of a weird thing. So then I was like, oh, he died differently than I would have imagined.
Yeah. So anyway, I literally wrote something in his neck. I don't know. Drum beat comes back. Henry just looks horrified. And
the
then
drum beat is like an executioner's march, right?
Yes.
So with the you'll be seeing me soon, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the final march towards Henry's execution that we've been building up towards.
Yeah. And so then it flashes back to what the priest said. He says, long before morning, you will know that what you are seeking to discover was the thing you had known all along. And then it's back to Henry and his dad. And his dad just says, very, very soon.
And you see the watch on his wrist as confirmation.
Yep. And so then there's trumpets. Like now the music is different. It's like trumpets and it's drums, almost like happier drums. It's like morning drums, if that makes sense. It's dawn. It's like, 5 a.m. And he goes into a shed, finds this old car. He takes the cover off and he tries to kill himself through carbon monoxide poisoning this time. It then flashes back to his dad at the dining room table, that same table where he was with Lord Norton and Yas.
And the way they're positioned at this table is Henry's dad is sitting at the head of the table in the seat that Henry was sitting at breakfast this morning. His mom is sitting in the seat that Yasmin is sitting in, and little Henry is sitting in the seat that Lord Norton is sitting in the morning.
Yeah. And the dad says, shine your shoes, boy, to this little kid. His dad stands up and walks off. And then you see Henry turn to see his dad walk away. And it's adult Henry. And he looks down at his shoes. And then you hear more from the priest, which says, the first person the coward deserts is himself. And then it's back to Henry, present day, trying to fill up the garage with carbon monoxide. It kind of goes back and forth between these flashbacks and everything. And then you see him kind of go follow his dad up the stairs, looking outside. And you see him go on like to that moor, but again, Henry can see him, and you see a rope, and that's it.
And the car. So
and the car.
I thought I was like, did he get up on the car and have the car go to try to hang himself? I was like, did he accidentally decapitate himself trying to hang himself? I was trying to figure out the mechanics of this suicide involving the rope, the car, and the tree.
And this seems like a bad game. You know what I mean? You know, it was this guy in the den with the
Clue, yeah, with the candlestick.
Yeah.
That's a bad game of Clue.
It's a bad game.
We don't know. But
Right.
I do think that given this convertible that he has found in the shed is the car that he saw his father with the rope, and we see this giant tree out there. I mean, maybe this is just the last car he saw his father driving. I don't know. I think we are given to think that his father hung himself, and that's why he had the wound at the base of his neck. And the only question was, is he the headless ghost or not?
Oh, that would make more sense too. Okay, so the priest continues, the voice of the priest says, courage ceases to be courage if it wavers. And then you see, as I said, Jon Snow, but whatever, they see the whole thing. We choose to be ruined rather than change. We would rather die afraid than be present for a single second. Kill our illusions and live. And then you hear Yas saying, Henry, Henry. So it is Yas and her voice who is the one that kind of gets him out of this funk, like her voice. He opens his eyes. He's still in the garage and he realized he doesn't want to fucking die. So he like goes outside and now it's actually light. And you start the new song, which is, you know, you're just too good to be true. Can't take your eyes off of you. So Henry then gets in his car, drives to the castle, screaming for Yasmin. She runs outside. She's like, you scared the shit out of me. Jumps in his arms. They kiss, right? And she says, you ever do that to me again, and I am the one that will kill you. And he just nods. They basically have sex in the car. She looks up and like sees Lord Norton like creepily watching them. And he's just like, spring is coming. So creepy.
Okay, I seriously was laughing so hard during this scene with her having sex on the car and Lord Norton is watching. I was like, is he going to give her a thumbs up? Like, what is this? And like, the spring is coming for me. You keep saying Jon Snow when it comes to Henry Muck.
Yes.
I was like, is this the inversion of the winter is coming from Game of Thrones? Like that spring is coming to this estate. It's Christmas morning, pretty much. Like there's spring's a long way off.
Yeah.
But obviously I think you're supposed to start thinking about fertility and life coming back to the estate.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
But yes. I feel terrible. I just literally could not stop laughing.
That's so funny. But so anyway, so now it like flashes forward a few minutes, like 10 minutes, whatever. And Yas has a scarf around her head and Henry behind the steering wheel. And he turns to Yas and says, my father killed himself on the morning of his 40th birthday. Yas says, you beat him. And Henry says, beat the cunt by a single sunrise. Yas says, you're a senior. They kiss. By the way, she kisses his hand, which is bloody, by the way, and she gets blood on her mouth. And she's like, happy birthday, darling, which is like a little bit creepy. He says, I've been thinking. Yas says, you're going to take Whitney's offer. And he says, if it's what's best for us, a man needs work. And I think that's why I'm here after all, is to do good work. She says, yes. She puts on her sunglasses. They then drive off. And then the song, I Want to Run Where the Streets Have No Name comes on. And as they're driving, Henry says, I think we should try for a child. And Yas has this look of like, no, you know, like she clearly does not want one. It's wild that he says his father should have killed himself because he passed on to him this like immense depression, right? Which was awful and so painful for Henry. Yas had just found out about her dad, like basically like had her so that he could abuse her. She does not want a kid. I think we basically get the idea that like maybe Henry thought he should not have a kid. But no, he's like, maybe we should try for a child. And it ends.
Yeah, well, and Yasmin, so their facial expressions are very important. First of all, they're in his convertible. They're in still this convertible, which was the thing that he saw his father in right before he died. So they're out on the open road. Henry is flooring it. Yeah. And Yas is like, ooh, like, okay now, as they're going where the streets have no name, the old U2 song from the 80s, because we love our 80s music and industry and in life. And maybe it's from the 90s, I'm not sure. Early 90s though. And she almost looks a little scared. When he's flooring it, he doesn't look like, yay, happy, let's mistake the open road for freedom like Robert. It's like, is he gonna crash the car? I do think there's that like almost scary element to him flooring it. And you look at his face, he does not look happy like everything has been resolved. He still has this look of dread on his face. She, after he says that line, like immediately, like her smile turns to horror, but she licks the blood off of her lip that was on her lip the whole time.
Oh, I missed the licking the blood part.
Yes, that's the last shot as the thing ends. Dude. And they're both looking straight ahead. And now it's not, I'm cured of my suicidal tendencies. It's like,
well, it's almost like manic depression. I mean, it's manic.
Looks cell shock, but it's very clear that he's doing this for her, not for himself. He is doing this for her, but he knows the alternative is death. It's very binary here. And there is that old trope of people being like, let's have a baby to fix the relationship.
Right.
No, don't do that. But this is like almost comically, like Yasmin is so happy that he's finally said what she wanted, which was, I'll go be CEO. She's like, yes, I did it. We did it. We got him back. And then he's like, let's have a baby. And she's like, huh?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So,
no, but there's this very ominous moment where she licks that blood off her lip, where like the wheels.
It also sets the tone for potentially what's to come in the remainder of the season.
Yeah,
Interesting.
So, excellent episode. Where I left this in my notes was I said the following. I said, Henry wishes his dad has had a vasectomy. Yasmin was told that she basically was supposed to have been aborted, but was only brought into the world by her perverted dad because she was a girl. And now we've planted this seed that Henry wants to bring something new into the world that is his and Yasmin's. The question is, knowing that it's Christ's birthday, Christmas, the idea of him birthing something new into the world out of their troubled and problematic relationship, is that going to be the second coming and a miracle that saves them? Or, in the words of W.B. Yeats, in possibly my favorite poem called The Second Coming, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So I think we have yet to see what kind of horror could be birthed of the new plan to A, put Henry in as CEO of Tender, and B, now Henry and Yasmin's relationship finally coming to fruition.
Love it. All right. So with that, this is a really important announcement. We have started a new industry-only dedicated YouTube channel where we will be sharing the video for this. We are going to likely not be sharing these full episodes on the big channel, the big YouTube channel. So if you are subscribed to the big channel, please make your way over to, it's HBO Industry Podcast is the handle. So pretty easy to find. And we will actually attach it to our big channel as well. So you can hopefully find it. Just look down below on the main dashboard. But we're going to be putting it on over there because we assume that most people want to be able to more easily find the episodes than like trying to dig. And anyway, so just a little bit easier over there. And a lot of people who are on the big channel don't necessarily watch the show. And then there's a lot of people that do watch the show that don't care about the finance stuff. So anyway, we're going to be splitting them out. And any other announcements, Jen?
No, I mean, we always do bullish and bearish. I don't think it's as evident after this episode whom we should be bullish and bearish on, but I continue to be bullish on Harper. I'm very excited about her track this season. I mean, bearish on Henry Muck, just because like, I don't know how this ends in anything other than tears for him, but I'm certainly bearish on Yasmin's aunt. How about you?
I would say I'm bullish on Yasmin, but like basically a scary version of Yasmin. Like, I do think that licking blood, like that's very, you know what I mean, though? It's very like
predatory. She's
well, that's sadistic, but like
you'll recall too from the first line of the episode, Henry says, "I'm an omnivore," and this is a very carnivorous move from her that she is out for blood,
which is also very interesting. That especially as you think about the dynamics and the.
Dear listener, dear viewer, one change from our typical procedure. I said from the beginning, I only ever want to watch one episode at a time because I never want to color it through the lens of having watched future episodes. But I did go ahead and watch season 4, episode 3, just because I was terrified that there wasn't going to be any more finance. It is super finance heavy. That is
it's probably going to be
juggernaut. That's going to be like a 6-hour recording. So fear not. If you were listening to this episode and you were like, I really don't want to hear any more English romantic art history lessons, and you're excited to get back to the finance, don't worry, we will.
Awesome. All right. So with that, we will see you next Sunday, 10:01, right after the episode drops. And please share with a friend if you think that they would like to learn more about industry.
All right.